Hi everyone. Alright, so to try and get us a little more ahead, I've decided to create presentations with audio to assist with your understanding of the different areas. So we are still on marketing and we are going to look at the following objectives, right? Consumer behavior, personal selling, selling tactics, merchandising. We're also going to look at the various terms of sales and customer service and organizations that also work on behalf of us consumers and protecting consumers. Right? We're going to look at the concept of consumer behavior. Right now, we are all consumers, and there are many things that affect how we behave as consumers. What really causes us to make certain decisions. And I think one of the key factors that we all can relate to is price. Right now, consumers, or we as consumers, we base our decisions or we adjust our demand based on what the price is for a particular good. So, for instance, if the price is low and we in demand of that product, we tend to um, demand it more than if the price was higher, right? So generally, when price is high, demand tends to increase, and when demand tends to decrease, and when price is low, demand tends to increase, right? So that's generally for you know most products. Another factor that affects our behavior as consumers is the price of substitutes. Now, if the price of substitute is lower, then what you will find is another factor is quality. Many of us, when we purchase goods, we consider what the quality of the good is first before we decide. And there are many persons who tend to gravitate towards products that are of quality or higher quality, even though they may have to pay higher for it, right? So that's a factor that affects our choice also. We also have taste, which means preference. Persons differ in their preference or taste or like for a particular good. So, as a business, that is the one that is marketing now the product, it will be very good through your market research to determine if persons have a preference or liking for your product. Right? Then we have tradition. Now, then we have persons whose choice is affected greatly by income or being able to afford the product or the service. Right? So if your income is low or your disposable income, that is what you have available to spend, is not sufficient, then that will cause you to behave accordingly when you're buying. However, if you have enough income, then you will also react differently when you're purchasing. Right? And then we have spending patterns. Now, some people are what we call penny pinchers. We, they spend based on, their budget, and that is it. And then there are those who spend a bit more freely, right? Obviously, there are other factors such as income um, that may affect that. So this is also another factor that affects consumer behavior. Then we have brand loyalty. Many persons demand products, right? So these are all the factors that relates to consumers and why they choose to buy certain products. Now, as a business, obviously knowing these things will help you to determine how best to sell your product, right? And personal selling is a method that also falls under promotion. So, as a business, when you're promoting yourself, you're not only doing it through advertising, but or sales promotion. but you're also going to be using personal selling approaches or techniques to get persons to buy your product. And this is very important. So you advertise, you inform them, and this will bring them to the business. But your selling tactics or techniques is what will actually convert um, that person into buying the product. All right. So we're going to look at some of the selling techniques and some guidelines as to how salespersons can approach consumers so that they can make the sale, which is the key part function here in all of the promoting aspects. So what is personal selling and what is selling first of all? Now selling is getting consumers to buy a product. Right? So as I said, you can inform them that the product is available. You advertise, they come to the store. But how do you get them to buy? That is what selling means. Personal selling, on the other hand, involves getting your members of your sales force, that will be your sales rep, to interact with consumers, right? To explain the product, to say how it works, so that customers now can behave in a manner that will, close that sale, right? To get them to buy. Now, of course, on in selling, right? So what we find is that in very large companies, obviously your sales force would be under a department, which is the sales marketing department, and there will be a sales manager in charge of that sales force. Now, that of course is different when we get to smaller companies. And as we talked about organizational structure, we see that structure differs in smaller versus larger companies. So, in a smaller company, you may not necessarily have departments. What you may have, businesses may use what we call freelance salesmen, and they will go about selling the product of that business, most likely at a commission, salary, whatever the case may be. But they are employed, or they are on the freelance work of different manufacturers, right? So that is an option that small companies use to get their products sold as opposed to large companies. Now, salesmen. Now, there are many advantages to personal selling, right? Meaning setting up a sales force, making sure that they're skilled and making sure they have the right approaches, right, to be able to bring that sale. Um, and that involves one, being able to get a lot of detailed information. So, information can be collected by the approach that personal selling um, involves. You also get a good chance to build relationships, right? And this, as I said earlier, um, brings loyalty, right? And many of your customers can therefore return to your business so that they'll be, that business will be able to have repeated sales. Also, your salesperson will have, experience, right? So personal selling allows your salespeople to have experience in meeting customers and dealing with different customer situations, and that helps them to build their level of motivation. And of course, business. Now, of course, there are some disadvantages to personal selling. Remember, I said that we're going to need a sales force, and especially in large companies, it means that now you have to have the capital available and you have to have the labor available, right? If you visit a lot of large companies, you notice that there are a lot of sales reps, which means that this is cost in terms of labor, right? So it can cost a business a lot when they have to rely on personal selling, right? So it's very labor intensive. Also, personal selling has a limit, so you can only reach a certain amount of persons. When persons come in, unless the business is using what we call a door-to-door selling approach, which we find some businesses using, but in general, there's a lack of reach, right? So it's limited to whoever comes in to your business, and it's not, far reach. So, what qualities are important for a good salesperson? Have you ever met salespersons? Have you ever thought about what qualities were good in that salesperson? Or have you ever identified some qualities in a salesperson you experienced that were not so good? I can think of a few also. So, some good qualities that every salesperson must have, right? They must possess a thorough knowledge about the product. So, if you're selling something to a consumer and the consumer asks you about the product, your response should not be, I'm not sure or I don't know, right? Or let me find out, right? This is something that you should have known, first of all, being a customer sales rep. So, a thorough knowledge about the product is very important, right? Because that plays a key role in helping the selling process, right? Understanding human nature and customers' point of view. It's very important that you're dealing with people and you're dealing with different personalities, and everyone will come in there with a different view, right? And it may not always be the same as your view. So it's very important that you understand human nature, you understand how to deal with different persons, how to deal with different personalities that may come across when you experience consumers. You must have energy and drive. So you shouldn't walk in there and the consumer is more energetic than who's selling the product, and we see that a lot sometimes in businesses. So the salesperson is not very motivated and inspired in the role that they play, right? They're not very courteous, they lack patience. These are turn offs also. So as a salesperson, you need to show that you are at least interested in the job that you're doing and willing to serve and have patience most of all. You must be friendly because you're dealing with people. So it has to be reflected in how, the experience that you give. You must have the ability to plan, and having an approach is key. So when you encounter a salesperson, it shouldn't be just a haphazard way of just letting it flow. You must have a plan as to how to get things done based on the consumers that you come across each day. Ability to see and understand how competitors work. Right? Every business should be aware of the competition and how they operate, and that will help you to improve how you operate. Right? So as a salesperson, that is also important. Being honest and persuasive. Honesty, very important here. I've had some instances where salesperson were not very honest, right? And that can reflect that you're not so interested in helping resolve the issue that the consumer has, right? So added to being persuasive, you must be honest with the consumer, and I think that will help to build that relationship of trust, which would keep consumers loyal to your business. Be suitably dressed and groomed. Now, I've shared this with many students over the years, and I've read it from textbooks also. In particular, being groomed. Groomed here also includes how you smell, how you look, right? And how your dress, your appearance. These things can be turn offs or, you know, attract consumers to you, right? And that is important as part of being a salesperson. Provide qualities that salesperson must, you know, perform. And now we're gonna look at what techniques can they apply as salespeople. Now there are different approaches, some of which you might be familiar with, some of which are new in terms of the name, but I think we're familiar with the approach, right? So I'm going to now look at some of these techniques. Generally, what approach is being used when a consumer comes to you, and then we're going to look at some of the other approaches by name that have been applied. So your first step in selling involve prospecting and qualifying. A salesperson has to be able to identify prospective customers. Right? So when customers come in, or if you're an agent in whatever job as a salesperson, you must be able to identify your consumers and you know categorize them based on the information you collect and based on what you think they need. And that will give you a better idea of how to plan to get them to buy that product. Right? So there must be prospecting and qualifying. Pre-approach. Now the salesperson must seek to discover as much as possible about the prospect or the consumer, right? The person that you're hoping to sell the product to. So the more you know about their need, about them, and that will help you to solve the problem or to provide a product that will be suitable for them. Now your approach is key, and as I said, there are many different approaches that can be used, but your appearance first of all and your opening remarks is very important. All right? In many cases you see salespeople. Then we have presentation and demonstration. Right? Now, in many cases, based on the product that is being sold, for tangible products, it's important that after listening to what the consumer would have said, you try to find a product that suits their needs. And in some cases, you may have to demonstrate to them before they can actually decide. So, like buying a car, the person may actually sit in the car or do a test drive, right? And then they decide. Now, sometimes it takes a little while before they actually decide. So you may not get them to buy the car immediately, but with all the presentation and demonstration and you building that relationship, you give them the opportunity to negotiate, and then you can lead them to closing the sale at some point, right? So that aspect is very important where you actually demonstrate. Handling objections. Now this sometimes come up in the whole selling process, so you may not always have a smooth sale, where consumers come in, you provide. Then we have closing of the sale. So the point where the consumer actually purchases the product, you collect your monies, and that process is ended. You can say that the sale has been closed. Right? Now, sometimes you cannot force the closing of the sale too soon. So making the customer feel pressured into buying, especially when it's an expensive, valuable product. You want that consumer to take their time and not feel pressured, right? Because sometimes you may lose them in that process. So in closing the sale, you have to be very tactful, to be patient, but at the same time use your selling approach to be able to get them to close the sale without waiting too long of a time, to cause them to lose their interest. Now there must be follow-up. Some companies do not do any follow-up, right? Because the sale has closed, they've collected the money, you're gone with your product. They leave it up to you if you have to complain. Right. So what are some of the approaches that I mentioned? Now the first two involves what we call warm calling or cold calling. Warm calling is basically what a lot of companies do. There are customers, the customers, you probably have information on them before, and you're calling them maybe because you have some new products you want to sell to them, etc. Right? So we see companies do that a lot, One typical example like Digicel. So you're a customer, they have your contact, they call you, they may have new plans or new, feed something new that they want to sell to you. But then you have the cold calling approach. Now this one is has to be very tactful again because you're calling a potential customer. Then we have hard selling versus cold selling. Now hard selling and cold selling is all about how how much pressure you choose to use. So, as the name says, soft selling, this is more a personal, subtle persuasion involved in, in convincing the buyer. All right, so you're providing them with some guidance and you're giving them some alternatives and you leave it up to them to decide. But then you have those that are a bit more high pressure tactics, right? A bit more direct in their approach. Then we have the consultative or solution selling approach. Now these approaches are very similar, but in that they get the consumer to make a decision by offering them guidance and a solution. But the consultative approach is a bit more soft in that in trying to get the consumer's need to be satisfied or to provide a solution or a product, you are being more process driven, right? So you try to understand the problem, you try to see what products can satisfy their need, right? Like something like what a financial advisor may do. They get information, they collect that information about you, right? Especially when it's highly technical products and you need, you know, someone of with knowledge to give you the comparisons and to explain to you, about that product to make you feel a bit more confident in using or buying that product, right? And then you have the solution selling approach, which gives you a direct solution to your problem. So they would right, and then we have the last approach, which is the customer personality selling approach, right? So every customer has different personalities. So how do you sell your product to someone by first knowing their personality? So it means that in the opening remarks, where you get to know the person a bit, you try to pick up on what their personality type is, especially if it's a new customer. If it's somebody that you know or would have sold to before, then you would have a little more idea because you would have relate or engage them, right? So there are different personalities. You have those that are very expressive. So you also would have to use an approach that will correspond, maybe by giving them stories or cases that involve the product and how it was solved, because you realize that they are the expressive type. Then there are those who are very amiable, right? More kind in terms of personality. So you tend to speak about, the objectives, the vision of your product, or you try to capture some of the details that would solve their needs, their problems. Then there are the very assertive types, right? So you want to go to them with facts. And then those that are very analytical, you also want to get your information right as much as possible. Be very thorough because these type of consumers will be analyzing everything about that product and their needs. And then you have those that are very price conscious, the cheap ones. They would tend to want to get the lowest price, right, or the best deals. So you come to them with that, right? Whatever deals you may have, whatever discounts you may have, and that will, appeal to that personality. So by looking at the different personalities, you can actually um, use that approach to pinpoint how best tailor. All right, so part of selling also involves merchandising. So you walk into a store and you see a lot of um, nicely designed setup areas, or you see the shelves packed in a certain way, right? These are all about promotion also, right? So this is actually a promotional tool that involves the whole selling aspect, and businesses use this sort of presentation of their products to try to attract customers, right, and to help them to buy. So for instance, you walk into a supermarket and you see certain displays of certain items, and sometimes they use a theme setting based on the time of the year or certain season. You see the display changes to suit, right? So merchandising is the process of leading a customer to a sale. It helps the customer to complete that sale, right? So you capture them with that presentation, draw their attention, and that should give them some nudge to actually buy the product. Now, merchandising can also show consumers the variety that is within the store. So, based on the setup that you have, it can also include a variety of the things that you offer, right, for them to choose from. So, as I said, merchandising is about presenting the goods, and you have to be very skillful also. It's not just about throwing goods here and there. It has to be well designed, well, attractive enough, and the right quantity. It can't be this kind of cluster that could create, you know, a lot of disturbance in terms of movement within the business place. And it has to be the right price also, so that consumers can be attracted to buying. So there are different methods that can be used, right? The typical examples, you have interactive displays. Some businesses use sound, motion technology, right? It all depends on the business. Then we have setting up of shop windows. So we see displays in windows. Those who have very large glass windows, we see displays, right? Like boutiques, they do that. Setting up of opening page of online. Remember, e-commerce is also a part of retailing, which we call e-tailing, and they also do merchandising. So how they set up their opening online website page, that is also a part of attracting a consumer, right, to the page. Putting goods in a pyramid rather than a straight line. We've seen those in some cases. New products, they try to put new products next to popular ones so that you can see it, right? Or next to um, other products that are frequently used, right? Placing goods at eye level rather than on the top or bottom shelves. So those that they want you to buy, they tend to put it right in your eye view, right? Um, to try to promote the sale of the product. Decorating the business, offering free samples, free offers, um, signs on the shelves. Here you may see certain signs about discounts and offers, right? And those kind of things. And I mentioned creating themes like Christmas. You may see a Christmas deco, all designed to attract the consumer, right? And also price adjustments is also part of that, because remember, merchandising is part of promotion, and you cannot, display and offer this kind of attraction without also including price as part of the attraction. So sometimes you notice the goods are marked down in a lot of cases, meaning there's a price reduction, right? It can also include a price increase, right? But it all depends on what your motive is for that price increase, right? So in most cases, you see a price reduction, right? So why do people do merchandising? What's the advantage of it? It helps to boost your sales, right? By attracting people into your store, right? By how you display and all of that, it helps to increase your sales. And by increasing your sales, your profit will increase, right? You find that they're more satisfied shoppers, persons engaged more, right? On that side, your goods start selling even quicker, and people become more loyal to your business and to your brand. So there's more recognition there for your goods or your brand. But there are some disadvantages, right? For instance, you may have to change your displays often because you don't want it to become monotonous to the buyer. Right? So it's like you're walking there, oh, that same old display from 3 weeks ago. So that could be a bit of cost to you to always having to change your displays, right? If the business is very small, you may find that it becomes a bit of burden on the owner because there isn't much labor at that small business. So that is extra burden on the business owner, right? Sometimes you can have more customer service issues because of your merchandising. Sometimes your merchandising fails. So it did not increase sales, it did not boost sales, it did not do anything that you would have expected in terms of promoting. And that would be losses to you because you would have expended costs. Also, if you don't have the skilled persons to get involved in setting up or to implement your merchandising techniques, that can also be a disadvantage to you. Right? So it's important that it is planned, it is effective, and that you have persons that are skilled in merchandising. Right, so that's it for merchandising. Another aspect of selling, of course, is all about how you allow customers to pay. So when you go to a retailing business or any business, as a matter of fact, do you have options on how you pay for the goods? Right? So your selling techniques, your advertising, your merchandising, all of that help to promote your sales. But you can actually use terms of sale to also help increase your sales. How is that so? By giving persons different options, you can actually allow persons to buy. Now, if the only option was cash and that person does not have enough cash for that item, then you lose that sale. So, by creating different options of payment, you find now that sales can be boosted because you allow persons to pay differently. Options. Of course, the first option is cash, which is the most popular and acceptable option. So, persons pay money. It also involves checks. So they get, immediate cash payment for their goods. And that's a good thing for businesses because one, your stock is moving and it's very convenient for both parties. You don't have any risk of bad debts here because you collected your money. But of course, for consumers who would have liked to have credit, right, that is not available, right? Then we have credit sales as another option. Now here you don't need any money, so that's a plus for the buyer who don't have money. You actually get to go with the product and use the product before making all payments. And for the seller, you get to sell your goods. So sales is actually increasing even though you've not collected all your money, which is the main disadvantage because that money is necessary for you to continue operating. And sometimes you may create bad debts, right? So that could be a disadvantage on your end for credit sales. Then we have hire purchase. We are all familiar with hire purchase used by many retailers, especially those that offer things like house, appliances, furniture, and those sort of things. They offer, sorry, hire purchase. Hire purchase is basically where you create a contract between yourself and the buyer, that is the business. You've been the one creating a contract, and then the buyer is a customer. Now, the buyer in some cases will have to make a down payment, or you may make it more attractive by having 0% down payment. Right? So it all depends on the agreement that you have. But how it works is that the buyer is going to make installment payments for a period of time that the contract exists until they are complete. While they are making the payments in installment, they can possess the good for that period. Right? So the owner allows the buyer to possess the good and use the product while paying for the product still. So that is a good thing for the buyer since they may not have all monies or cash at the same time of buying. However, this could be a disadvantage because to the buyer, you have added costs here in terms of interest, right? So it's very expensive. The product becomes very expensive at the end of the day because of interest than if you bought it cash. Also, if you cannot make your final all payments, the good may be repossessed, right, by the company, and that is a disadvantage to you, the buyer, right? So obviously, the good is not your property until you make all payments, right? So that's some disadvantages with hire purchase. Then we have cash and trade discount. So these are the terms of sales, right? A cash discount is different to a trade discount. Now, a cash discount involves reducing the amount that the consumer has to pay. So if a consumer comes into your business and let's say they want to buy a chair set, $9.99, and you have this price discount, let's say 75% off. Then we have layaway. Now, layaway has picked up a bit within Grenada by many retailers, although not very popular. But you find companies are using it, right, to allow customers to purchase an item, but the difference is they are not going to possess it or actually be able to use it until they finish paying. Right? So they're basically reserving that item or product for you in store. After you make all payments, then you can leave with the item. So pretty much the advantage here is one, to the buyer, you get a chance to buy an item that you may not be able to buy, you know, it right up, meaning find all the money and pay for it immediately. And for the seller, you actually get to sell your goods and at the same time give people options that are suitable to them, and you get them loyal to your business, continue buying, right? So there are advantages here to both parties. But on the disadvantage side, we find that there are more disadvantages to the buyer than the seller, because the seller really does not lose, because in creating this agreement with the buyer, one, they will ensure that the product remains with them, so they're not losing the good, right? Two, they are collecting the monies from the buyer. Three, if there are any problems with the buyer continuing or breaking the agreement, sometimes we have fees that are charged. Sometimes the buyer may not be able to get back all their money. So at the end of the day, the seller does not lose, right? So a buyer is the one that has to be careful when using the layaway plan or term of payment, right? Then we have the final um, term of sale, which is consignment. And a typical example where this could work with any type of business, but some businesses where you find this occurring, let's say like an artist putting his work in an art gallery for sale on consignment, meaning the product or goods will be in possession of that art gallery, the third party who is selling the product, for the person who is making the product. And only after the product is sold, then they will collect payment for it. So the person who creates the product is the consigner. They own the goods. Like the artist, he owns the art pieces. The person who is selling the goods on behalf of the consigner is the consignee. And when the consignee sells the goods to the buyers, so if someone comes in and buy an art piece that belongs to an artist, the consigner, only after the sale is made and money is collected, then the consignee sends that amount to the consigner, and the consignee gets a commission for selling that product. So there are businesses that actually operate like this. They sell goods on consignment, right? So that's another term of sale. All right, so some advantages, of course, you save on inventory holding. You don't need to pay for the goods upfront. If the goods are unsold, also, you can return it, right? Of course, the disadvantage is you receive less revenue, right? So the consigner, because he has to pay a commission, that's less revenue than if he sold it himself, right? But at the end of the day, you get in your goods sold, right? Um, of course, there's a cost for holding inventory, so that is something that both parties have to be mindful of. Right, so that is it for the terms of sale, as I said, which are options allowed within your selling process. And as I said, this helps to promote your selling of goods even more because you're now giving options to your consumers. So, customer service, how does that help with the whole promotion? Customer service is the direct. So, what are different forms of customer service? And in looking through the list, I'm sure we can find companies in Grenada that offer all of these customer service options or most of it, right? So we have, of course, the most traditional, which is on-site customer service business. So you go to the business, there's a customer service rep, and they help. Right. So, of course, protecting consumers is very important in all this process. From a business end, you find that they're more focused on their motive, which is profits, by making a product, satisfying the need, but at the end of the day, making profits for themselves. So, who really is going to protect the consumer? So, consumers have rights. Do you know what your consumer rights are? Now, government has an agent or a arm of government that is supposed to be handling all consumer issues. All right, that department maybe it's not as popular as it should be, meaning a bit more out there and providing more information. So, who protects consumers basically, and why should they be protected? Because we find that there are a lot of businesses that, you know, are not too keen on quality because they're more concerned about profits. So sometimes you find that products are harmful to you, which are created by businesses all in the name of trying to gain money. Then we have the final um, term of sale, which is consignment. And a typical example where this could work with any type of business, but some businesses where you find this occurring, let's say like an artist putting his work in an art gallery for sale on consignment, meaning the different organizations that are responsible for protecting consumers includes, of course, government. Now, government has many regulations that are in place, right? Some of which are mentioned in this list here, and also different bodies that are set up to handle specific matters. So, one of these bodies, which I have mentioned, right? So, Of course, protecting consumers is very important in all this process. From a business end, you find that they're more focused on their motive, which is profits, by making a product, satisfying the need, but at the end of the day, making profits for themselves. So, who really is going to protect the right? So, basically, these are the information that relates to marketing, in particular selling, and related concepts such as consumer behavior and consumer related. Right? I also have some homework research for you relating to labeling requirements. I mentioned the Bureau of Standards. We need a Bureau of Standards. So I want you to check out what are the labeling requirements created by the Bureau of Standards. I'm going to post an activity in the classroom where you can post your answers. So please complete that. Um,